There is a strange paradox in modern life. We can reach each other faster than ever before, and yet we can be wounded by things smaller than ever before. Not a dramatic breakup, not a door slammed in our face, not a cruel insult we can point to and say, "There, that's where it happened." Sometimes it is just a short reply. "Okay. Sure. I'm fine. Cool. 'Kay. All right. Whatever. Later. Nothing. We'll talk." Tiny things, so tiny in fact, that they almost seem ridiculous to be hurt by. And that is exactly why they are so confusing. You look at the screen and see only a few ordinary words. Nothing obviously violent. Nothing openly rejecting. Nothing anyone else would call devastating. But inside you, the whole atmosphere changes. The room is still the same room. The night is still the same night. Nothing outside has truly collapsed. No disaster has announced itself. And yet something in your chest has shifted half an inch. Just enough for your peace to slide out of place. That is what is so unsettling about short replies. They rarely hurt because of what they say. They hurt because of what they fail to bring back. Not more words, necessarily. Not perfect wording. Not some cinematic speech. Just presence. You send someone, "I'm really tired today." They reply, "Okay." And logically, that is a complete sentence. Technically, they answered you. But what makes you pause is not the word itself. It is the space that opens after it. The uncertainty, the emotional blankness. You do not know whether they are distracted, distant, annoyed, drained, or simply unwilling to step toward what you just offered. So the mind does what minds do when they are left in fog. It fills in the rest. Okay as in, "I'm busy." Okay as in, "I don't care." Okay as in, "Please stop talking." Or am I just overthinking this again? And suddenly one small reply becomes a private investigation. You read it again, then again. You listen for tone in a place where there is almost none. You study punctuation like it contains a hidden confession. Why does this happen? Because human beings do not merely want responses. We want resonance. We want to feel that when we reach outward with something real comes back. Not always grandly, not even verbally. Sometimes all it takes is a little emotional movement, a softening, a follow-up question, a sign that what left our chest did not vanish into a wall. A short reply often denies us that feeling. It gives contact without comfort, language without landing, a reply without relief. And that is why it hurts in such a particular way. If someone openly rejected us, at least reality would be clear. Painful, yes, but clear. A short reply is worse in a quieter way, because it is not exactly rejection and not exactly closeness. It is a half-open door. It leaves just enough room for hope to survive and just enough emptiness for fear to rush in. That is exhausting, especially because the same short reply does not hurt the same way from everyone. If a coworker says, "Sure," you move on. If a delivery driver texts, "Okay," it means nothing. But when the person is someone you love, miss, fear losing, or have just been vulnerable with, those same few letters can suddenly weigh 10 times more. Pain is not measured by the size of the sentence. It is measured by the importance of the bond. And maybe that is where we begin to see the deeper truth. Short replies do not only disturb the present, they awaken history. From very early in life, we do not only learn how to speak, we learn what happens when we reveal ourselves. When we cry, does someone come? When we are afraid, does someone help us name it? When we say something that matters, does someone actually turn toward us? Imagine a child walking up to a parent and saying, "I'm sad." That child does not need a perfect speech in return. Most of the time, a softened face is enough. A hand on the shoulder. A simple, "You're sad, aren't you?" Just that. Just enough to teach the child something profound. My feelings are real. They can be seen, and they do not have to live alone inside me. But what if that does not happen often enough? What if the child grows up in a home that looks fine from the outside? Fed, clothed, provided for, maybe even loved in some practical sense. But emotionally, their inner world keeps getting brushed past. Their sadness gets minimized. Their fear gets interrupted. Their vulnerable moments keep meeting impatience, distraction, or a reply too thin to hold what they are feeling. Then the child learns something very different. Not simply, people speak briefly. Something much deeper. They learn, when I bring out the real part of me, there may not be anyone there to meet it. That lesson does not stay in childhood. It becomes a nervous system expectation, a quiet internal map. And years later, that same person can be sitting in bed, staring at a short text from someone they care about, feeling a pain they are almost embarrassed to admit. Because what is being touched is not just etiquette, it is an old question. When I reveal my inner world, does anything living actually come back to meet it? That is why so many people hurt over short replies, and then immediately shame themselves for hurting. They say, it's just a text. But the body does not hear the word just. The nervous system does not operate on that logic. It reacts to closeness and distance, to safety and uncertainty, to whether emotional contact feels mutual or one-sided. And a short reply can sound, to some part of us, like something ancient. There it is again. I opened up, and once again, I'm the one left holding everything. That is why these moments can feel irrational from the outside and devastating from the inside. Because what hurts is rarely the tiny message itself. It is the old loneliness it resembles. But there is another layer to this, one that makes the whole thing even more human. Many of the people most hurt by short replies are not weak. They are tired. They are the ones who have spent years being competent, available, thoughtful, emotionally responsible. The ones who always remember birthdays. The ones who check in first. The ones who notice when someone sounds off. The ones who drive across town, cancel plans, listen at midnight, hold everyone else's chaos together, and somehow still say, no worries, I've got it. They are the strong ones, or at least that is how they look. But a lot of strength is not strength in the pure sense. A lot of it is adaptation. A survival strategy that works so well for so long, it became an identity. Think about the kind of person who is clearly drowning. Too much work, too much stress, too much life. And when someone asks, do you need help? They smile and say, no, I'm good. Not because they are actually good, because somewhere along the line, they learned that needing people is risky. Maybe they asked once and were dismissed. Maybe they asked and felt the other person's tone change. Maybe they asked and got a promise that quietly evaporated. Maybe they grew up in an environment where vulnerability came with shame, annoyance, or disappointment. So they adapted. They became the one who handles things, the one who does not make their needs other people's problem, the one who would rather struggle in silence than feel like a burden, the one who says, I'm fine, while quietly falling apart. And here is the painful irony. Those same people are often especially wounded by short replies. Why? Because when they do reach out, really reach out, it means more than it seems. They are not just sending a message, they are risking exposure. They are testing whether, this time, opening up will lead to connection instead of emotional dead air. They are offering something tender from a part of themselves that has often had to survive alone. So when the reply comes back dry, minimal, unreadable, something in them does not merely feel disappointed. It feels confirmed. See, this is why I don't ask for much. This is why I keep things to myself. This is why I learned to carry everything alone. That is the deeper ache. And then there is the other pattern, the over-giver, the person who is always there, always adjusting, always remembering, always the first to check in, the first to make the plan, the first to smooth tension, the first to say, hey, are you okay? They are the emotional glue in so many relationships that other people almost stop noticing the labor altogether. Until one day, that person needs something back. They send a message that actually matters. Not dramatic, just honest. I've been feeling off lately. I miss you. Can we talk? I feel like something's different. And what comes back? Yeah, busy right now. Later. It's fine. Don't overthink it. That is when a short reply stops being a short reply. It becomes evidence. Not evidence that one specific person is bad. Evidence that the emotional math may have been uneven for a very long time. I show up. I remember. I listen. I adjust. I carry. And when I finally offer the softest part of myself, is this really all that returns? That is not just sadness. That is disorientation. Because the heart begins to realize it may have been calling something mutual that was actually being held together by one person's effort. This is why short replies often hurt more in relationships that are already imbalanced. They reveal what is normally hidden by routine. The person who always makes things work finally sees how little movement comes from the other side when they stop carrying the entire bridge. And for some people, that realization is life-changing. Not in one dramatic moment, more like erosion finally becoming visible. They do not explode. They simply begin to withdraw, quietly. They initiate less. They explain less. They stop overfunctioning. They stop translating the other person's vagueness into something gentler than it feels. They stop feeding relationships that survive only because they keep showing up first. From the outside, this can look like coldness, but often it is not coldness. It is depletion. A person does not always cut people off because they became heartless. Sometimes they just got tired of doing emotional math that never added up. Tired of always being the one who carries warmth into rooms that return temperature but not care. Tired of pretending they are not already lonely inside connections that keep offering them fragments. And this is where a really painful insight appears. A lot of people are not most lonely after they pull away. They are most lonely before. While still in the group chat, still in the relationship, still showing up at holidays, still technically included, still texting back and forth, but inside, already alone. A short reply in that context does not create the loneliness, it exposes it. It shows the emotional truth of something that may have been quietly starving for a long time. And because of that, many people become hyper-aware of shortness, vagueness, emotional thinness. Others call it overthinking. Sometimes it is. But sometimes it is pattern recognition, sharpened by years of having to notice little changes because nobody ever clearly named what was happening. A delayed warmth. A shorter answer than usual. The gradual disappearance of questions. Let's catch up soon, repeated until it means nothing. The body notices, not because it is dramatic, because it has learned to survive on subtleties. And there is one more twist here that makes the whole subject even richer. A person can hate being on the receiving end of short replies and still be someone who sends them. That contradiction is more common than people think. Because sometimes the same person who is deeply hurt by emotional thinness is also deeply afraid of emotional exposure. So when they feel overwhelmed, vulnerable, uncertain, or ashamed of needing too much, they become brief. They disappear into, "I'm good, don't worry, it's nothing, all fine." Not because they do not feel, because they feel too much, and brevity becomes a shield. So they suffer in both positions. As the receiver, they feel unseen. As the sender, they hide. They long for depth and fear it. They want to be met and do not always know how to remain open long enough to be met. They resent emotional distance and then use it as armor. That is not hypocrisy. That is adaptation. So what do we do with this? What do we actually do in that moment when the screen lights up, the reply is too short, and something inside us drops? The first thing is not to shame yourself for feeling it. That matters more than it sounds. Because so many people get hurt by a short reply and then immediately hurt themselves again for being hurt. Why am I like this? Why do I care so much? This is ridiculous. I'm too sensitive. I need to calm down. And with that, the original sting becomes a full internal collapse. But the wiser move is softer. Pause. Not to deny what happened, not to dramatize it, just to notice it. Something in me reacted to this. Something in me feels left alone by this. Something in me is afraid right now. That pause creates space between the message and the meaning. And in that space, a whole different kind of life becomes possible. Because if you do not pause, fear becomes the narrator. And fear is not an honest storyteller. Fear fills in missing information with old pain. Fear takes a vague reply and turns it into prophecy. Fear says, "You are too much. They are done. This is the beginning of the end." Pull back first, apologize, chase, shut down, disappear. It does not know how to wait for reality. It only knows how to protect you from what has hurt before. But a mature inner life asks better questions. Is this a moment or a pattern? Is this person often warm when it really matters? Or am I always left translating scraps? Am I reacting only to this message or also to something older? Do I need reassurance right now or do I need truth? Can I ask directly for clarity instead of building a whole mythology around 4 letters? These questions do not remove pain instantly. They restore dignity. And maybe that is where this whole subject leads us in the end. Not to the conclusion that people should write longer texts. Not to the conclusion that everyone who sends short replies is cruel. Not even to the conclusion that we should never care. But to a more honest understanding of what hurts. Short replies hurt because they often resemble something larger than themselves. They can feel like emotional half-presence. They can echo old moments of being undermet. They can expose imbalance. They can awaken the ache of wanting to matter without having to earn it over and over again. Most of all, they hurt because they reveal how deeply human beings long not merely to be contacted, but to be received. That is the real hunger. To be received. To feel that when we say, "This is me. This is how I am today. This is the part I normally hide," something warm and alive comes back across the distance. Not performance, not protocol, not placeholder language, presence. So the next time a short reply lands heavier than it should, do not rush to call yourself dramatic. Do not rush to call the other person a villain either. Sit with the deeper truth for a moment. Maybe nothing is wrong. Maybe something is. Maybe the message is just a message. Maybe it is a mirror. But whatever it is, let it teach you something real. About your history, about your needs, about the kind of connection that nourishes you, about the kind of ambiguity that drains you, about the relationships in which you can breathe, and the ones in which you are always left translating silence. Because perhaps the deepest reason short replies hurt so much is not that they are small. It is that they expose how large the hunger is underneath all of us. The hunger to be seen, to be understood, to be met, to know that when we reach out with something alive, we do not vanish into emotional blankness. And healing begins when you stop treating that hunger like a flaw. It is not weakness. It is one of the oldest, most human truths there is. You were never asking for too much. You were asking for a response with a soul in it.